Okay, so I figure we'll probably have some more folks coming in throughout this meeting. We'll let them trickle in, but I want to be respectful of everyone else's time here. So thank you all for joining us today. This is our first webinar featuring a great topic. We found was there was a lot of interest here for de-escalation techniques for businesses. I'm joined by Courtney Brace from the MA Office of Public Collaboration, as well as Christopher Sabo. Christopher, am I saying that right? Cool. From the Mediation and Training Collaborative. I'm going to start off with some short housekeeping things related to this event. Where we are recording it. It will be available after, and you're able to pass this around to folks who were not able to join. But without further ado, let's get into it. So as I said, this webinar is being recorded. Please remain muted for the duration of the call. We do have a lot of folks in the house. If you do have a question, though, please don't hesitate to add it to the chat box. I'll be monitoring that to make sure we're able to get everyone's questions here. And we certainly want to hear from you all and your experiences today. With that, if you're not already signed up, our city alert system or our economic development newsletter, please don't hesitate to do that. And we can share that in the chat box as well. Just a quick city updates. Indoor and outdoor seating for restaurants. As of Monday, yesterday, indoor seating is permitted, given that you've submitted your health and safety plan and a layout plan for indoor. The full details on what you do need are on somervillema.gov/restaurant reopening. I believe we have Sanina Thomas on the call too, who is the point of contact for any questions regarding that. If you're looking for assistance or maybe need help in multiple languages, then that is certainly available to you. The Curbside Needs Survey, this is something we've had out for a couple weeks now. We are still looking for feedback, so if you are able to respond to that, we would love to hear how you would prioritize the use of the curb by where your business is. And then finally, additional tax relief for state sales, meals, and room taxes, and room tax are delayed. That was something that recently came out from the state, from the governor's office. What was typically going to be, or what was going to be due, I believe, at the end of July is now being pushed back until September to help. I think they recognize the incredible need right now, and so full details of that can be found on the state's website. And so, without further ado, I will hand it off to our presenters today. But thank you guys for joining us.
Thanks, Nick. It is great to be here with you all today. My name is Courtney Brace, as Nick mentioned before. I'm with the Massachusetts Office of Public Collaboration. We're excited. I'm thrilled that Nick reached out to us. We actually just held a webinar last week with the Mass Farmers Markets on the same topic. Certainly this is something that's really timely and really necessary as we all start stepping into what is, I guess, our new normal. And certainly, there's the potential that there may be some challenges, conflicts, or just frustrations, frankly, that can emerge as people, adjust to the changes that have been put in place necessarily. So just going to do one thing real quick there. Okay, there we go. Just to, mention, our aim for today is to talk to you all a little bit about, this context that we find ourselves in, and, share with you some tips and techniques as business owners or managers, what you can do when a customer or anyone really approaches you with an issue or is frustrated and has the potential to escalate. So before we get into those tips, I just want to kind of remind us all of the context that we're in right now. What we've gone through over the last 4 months now, if you can believe that, has been, completely uncharted territory for all of us. None of us have ever faced a global pandemic before. And so, there's a lot of unsettling kind of feeling right now amongst everyone. We're still kind of figuring things out as we go. There's a lot of unknowns we're dealing with because, leadership at the state level and the national level can differ greatly. There's a lot of polarization around some of the steps that people are taking, whether to wear the face mask or not. People are, they're anxious about potentially getting sick, but they also really want to get back to normal. And so there's so many elements that are going on in the background that can just potentially cause us those kinds of frustrations and anxieties that can bring us into these situations that we're going to talk about today. So, as much as I mentioned that for you to be mindful of what others are kind of sitting with when they come to you with a conflict or a problem, think too about kind of where you're at, how you're feeling when you go out in public, what you're, thinking about when you think about the future, and, kind of what your reaction is when you see someone who's, following a different etiquette than perhaps what you're doing at this point in time. And now I'm going to turn it over to my partner in crime, Christopher, to talk a little bit more about conflict.
Thanks, Courtney. And hello, everyone. Glad to be on the call with you all today. And I would just start by expanding a little bit more on the framing that Courtney has set for us, which I think is really, really useful. And just to take it one step further to say, even if we weren't finding ourselves in this uncharted context, conflict is pervasive, right? Conflict is inevitable. As human beings in relationship with one another, we have, and we will continue to experience conflict. I don't know about any of you, but I often experience conflict with myself, right? The inner relationship is a whole nother category that we're not going to touch on today. But so that's just something to think about as we're framing this, and as you're anticipating the interactions that you will have as a part of your daily life and how to approach those slightly differently. For the center that I work with and these trainings that we often conduct, which by the way, sometimes can be as many as 30 hours, De-Escalation is a really much broader project and presentation and training, but that we're really just touching on the surface here. But that thinking about conflict as an opportunity, right? So that being said, all of us have a style for our approach to conflict. And some studies that I've read in this field have looked at research and show that when you're somewhere around 8, 9, 10 years old, you will develop the style that often is your instinct in terms of how you approach conflicts when you experience them. So Courtney, if you wouldn't mind sharing, do I have the poll coming up next? I should share what the approaches to conflict are first. Here we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you all can see this, here are the 5. There's avoidance, right? Full transparency. My baseline approach to conflict is often first avoidance. Second down, we'll have competition. This is a win-lose scenario where someone who fits into this category, competing, is really trying to come out on top. There's a compromise scenario where it is that exactly, you get a little, I get a little, maybe there's some agreement, but maybe it's not ideal. Maybe it's not perfect for both. Accommodation, you can imagine really just giving in and letting someone else take the win, right? And then finally, there's collaboration. And this is a scenario where there is the opportunity to really look for and investigate the conflict, get more information, understand what each person really is wanting. And this we would call a win-win solution. So Courtney's going to launch a poll here in just a second. And I'd like for you to just think about not what you hope to accomplish, not what would be ideal, but sort of in those contexts where you're finding yourself in the midst of a conflict, what is your baseline response? What do you tend to lean towards if you look at these 5? And she'll launch this poll and give you an opportunity to just give us some feedback, and we'll be able to see the results here. It's anonymous, so don't worry about participating in that way.
Yeah, Nick, are you able to launch that poll? I don't see the option on my end.
I can do that. Yeah, let's do that. Okay. It's like I need to, oh, it looks like I need to add the question here. So, so if you want to give me a minute or two, I'll just type it out.
Sure. Yeah. So, and this will give everyone who's thinking about this just a little bit more of an opportunity to think about maybe a recent conflict that you experienced in personal or professional life. And at first, how did you respond to that? Which of these approaches did you lean toward? Not necessarily how you engaged further in that conversation or that conflict, and maybe how you worked things out or not, but again, that sort of initial instinctual response. And if a recent conflict doesn't come to mind, thinking back a little bit further and another maybe more present conflict that feels comfortable for you and safe for you to pull up out of the archives of your memory. Don't bring up something that doesn't feel like something you want to remember. But again, just thinking about, how is it that you do respond? Usually everyone fits into one of these categories. And if that isn't coming up easily too, we can also just invite folks to type in the chat if they're able to, and just type in which one of those 5 they might. Should we do that instead, Nick?
Yeah, sorry, it keeps disappearing for me, but I can.
No worries. I have not figured out how to do polls yet on Zoom, so it's totally okay. So yeah, if folks are able to, and if you're calling in, I don't know, it doesn't look like we have anyone who's called in on a non-smartphone or just on the number, but if you're able to, if you're in front of a computer or on your smartphone, just open the chat box and type in avoid or compete. Your name would come up with this. It's not a terrible thing to share that. But if you don't want to share, that's also okay. So we're seeing Patty said either compromise, but hopefully collaborate, right? And although sometimes avoidance, I'm seeing collaborate. Accommodate is often a first instinct. Someone has said.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
And it can be a combination. I've seen people who have 2 main kind of approaches, like Patty mentioned, compromise, hopefully collaborate. Great. It's like we have a lot of collaborators and accommodators here. Love it.
Oh, and I see the poll.
Did this
just
work? I
up.
finally got it.
Yes.
Sorry for the tardiness, but look, 100% accommodate. Here we go. The answers are coming in now. This is fun to see live too. This is great. Okay.
And I think at some point, Nick, you'll be able to share those results once you see how many folks have participated. But while those are coming in, Courtney, maybe you could take us to the next slide, which I just wanted to show a model instrument that some researchers had put together where if we look at the sort of the origin of of this graph and move to the right along the, actually let's move north along the y-axis. And if you see on the y-axis labeled as assertiveness, right? This is focusing really on personal needs, your personal agenda. You have a desired outcome and you're really sticking to that position. And at the top of that axis, we would put the category of competing, right? This is the win-lose power structure. If we follow the graph to the right, moving along cooperativeness, this idea that mutual relationships, there's an awareness of empathy, a focus on other people's needs. The further we go on that axis, we go more into accommodating. And it might be to a detriment. I want people to recognize too that if you're really accommodating someone, that's at a cost to you, right? And your needs. So centered there at the origin of the graph is the avoidance. Again, where I tend to, my first instinct when I'm feeling like I'm in a conflict is to be shutting down, walking away, sometimes a work in progress, a lifelong process, managing and working with conflict. But that's there, and kind of moving out above avoidance to compromise right in the middle. And that's, this relationship's undamaged, I would have you focus on, right? So that you're really just wanting to resolve the conflict in a way that brings things back to the baseline. And then moving further out, this sort of ideal zone, as we think of it, is a process of collaboration where the range of possible outcomes is really understood, right? We may enter a conflict feeling like, oh, that person said something that makes me feel like they're really not listening to what I want. And understanding through a process of collaboration that you're able to express that what you want and a lot more. And also that person's able to express what they were needing in that situation. And all of a sudden that initial conflict now has expanded into a range of possible resolutions that are more than it started with. And this would be a sort of win-win scenario. I hope that made sense. And let me just check in. Okay, yeah, so I think that's all I had to say there. I wonder if we had any, here's the poll results. Looks like 36% accommodate. That's our number one there. 0 competitors on this call. Great. Okay, and then collaborate at 29% and avoidance at 14%. So thanks. I hope that's helpful. That's something to know about yourself. And sort of where you tend to come from when approaching a conflict, and what those tendencies are, and to look at that and think about that, but also to know that others may be coming from one of these different styles. It may be similar to yours, or it may be different, and to recognize that as a dynamic in the relationship that you're having. So with that, I will turn it back over to Courtney. Tag, you're it.
Thanks, Christopher. All right. So yeah, we share that with folks because it's always really useful to be mindful of kind of where you sit. And certainly, in what we're going to be continuing to talk with you about in the remainder of the session today, is going to hopefully help you, move yourself a little more in the direction of collaboration if that's not kind of your natural, approach. So now we're going to talk a little bit about, what do you do when you're in this situation where you're faced with a conflict or you're faced with someone who's very upset. So much, we're going to talk more specific tips in a second, but so much of what this all comes down to is listening. And so I just wanted to share this slide because I just think it's helpful to understand really the goals and what's gained by just giving the person a chance to speak and to feel heard. So, in addition to just frankly, what we have here in the third bullet, which is diffusing emotions, people need to vent. So just giving them that space to do that, you also gain a lot yourself in terms of, gaining more information on what their concern is, on, what is important to them, so their positions and interests, which are also on here. But it also builds trust. So if someone's coming to you, they're upset because they have to wear their mask, in your establishment, they're not really feeling, they don't seem to understand that reason, or they have concerns about wearing masks and so on. They're understanding giving them a chance to speak and share their concerns, and all of that helps build trust, because you're not just simply shutting them down and telling them, well, this is the rules, the state, the city, etc., has put these rules in place, but you're giving them a chance to feel heard before you then explain to them why it is that these rules are in place. So it helps to build trust. It also helps to increase some clarity about perhaps what's concerning them. Maybe it's really just a specific issue underlying the concern about the mask. It doesn't necessarily have to be that they're just plain out refusing to wear it because they just don't understand. There may be a reason why they have that concern. And then finally, it models really good communication. So, if you approach the conflict with really good listening skills, you're very present, they feel like you're listening to them, it helps to model for them how, you would also like to be treated. To go back to the old adage, treat others as you would have them treat you. So listening is one of the ways that you do that. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen because Christopher and I are just going to talk to you now about some more of these tips and techniques. So Christopher, if you want to kick us off.
All right. So let's go to the moment where you're finding yourself in the context of a conflict. It's going to take a little bit to recognize that. You've been maybe, 5 items deep on your infinite to-do list and have a lot going on. You're in the middle of your workplace. You have the responsibilities that you have. And all of a sudden, here is a customer. Here is a neighbor who lives on the street. Here is someone who has come and things are beginning to escalate. So what do you do? And part of this involves that recognition of the awareness of, okay, I'm finding myself in this position where there's a conflict at hand and making the decision to engage, right? So this sort of magic moment is an opportunity to check in with yourself and where you're at. It may be a split second. It may take a little of that forward brain power thinking to actually be recognizing what is happening. And in that moment, in that second, there might be some emotions that come up. You might be feeling something. And there's a way to think about how you handle that sort of magic moment, I call it sometimes, as a way of grounding yourself. Another way to think about it is sort of anchoring yourself and making that conscious decision to go forward and to have this conversation and to do some of those listening goals that Courtney was just describing. So what are some ways, and again, I'm going to invite some folks to just go ahead and type in the chat box here. What are some ways that you stay grounded when you find yourself in a conflict? And again, maybe this is in a professional context, maybe this is in a personal relationship, and there's that second, you're like, okay, everything was normal, and now I'm feeling something. I'm feeling something, and I don't know what it is. I don't know that I could verbally articulate it. What am I going to do next? So how do you sort of center? There's a million ways you could say it, but what do you do? And let's see if we see some folks here typing something in as some examples.
Chris, can you phrase it again? Just so for folks who...
Sure. And I'll just read what Addie had written, which speaks right to that the slowing breathing down, trying to remain calm. So great example, actually being aware of breath and taking a breath. But the question was, you know, you've found yourself in that moment where you're feeling some emotions. Maybe the conflict is coming to you. You weren't intentionally trying to engage in a conflict, but something's happened and you're needing to, you're going to make the decision, perhaps as a business owner, to engage with this person. And so what do you do to stay grounded? What do you do to center yourself in that moment? Or what would you do if you know, nothing comes to mind? But let's see. Someone has listed, tune into my empathetic side. Great. And I'm sure we could ask you to expand on that and share a little bit more about what that looks like. Listening, someone has said. Some really thinking about the if you've seen Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? We have some very basic functional needs. Part of that is drinking water, right? Maybe hunger is an issue, and needing to eat something. That might not be ideal. You might not be able to just say, "Hold on, I need to have I need to have a bite of my sandwich." But drinking water is a really simple one. And again, going back to breath, I feel like that's a really important one. And then getting to this space of being able to tap into that empathetic side and be listening. So whatever you do, I would just encourage you to the more that you can become aware of that moment, and then do what you need to do for yourself so that you can effectively engage with someone, is the better the outcomes are going to be. So I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I need to breathe. I'm going to take a pause. I'll be right back and interact with you. Whatever that is, however you can articulate that, a first step. Lots to think about there. But another thing that once you find yourself in an interaction where conflict is happening, what are your verbal cues? Right? What are your nonverbal cues? What is your body language looking at? Are you looking at the person? Have you removed distractions that shows that person that you're attentive to them? Do you have a sort of open body language versus, you know, really closed off, not making eye contact? Do you have a calm tone of voice? Tone is huge when working with somebody else, and really we can think of tone in many ways as as an incredible de-escalator. Someone who you know, you may be. Let's think of a phrase here. You know, I'm not in a position to be able to talk to you right now. Versus, hey, I'm not in a position to talk to you right now. ... Right? The same words, different tone, expresses a different meaning. So also noticing their body language. You've had a chance to think about your body language and nonverbal cues. Are they exhibiting a closed off body language? Are they distracted, right? Are they not making eye contact? What's going on with them? So just again, building awareness around the dialogue and the dynamic that you're having. Something called reflective listening here is the next thing I would share. And so like Courtney had mentioned, the goals of listening, getting information, building trust, all of that stuff. So asking them to speak, hearing what it is that they have to say, and really listening to that, coming from this place of, I can't stress this enough, but coming from this place of genuine curiosity, right? Really being interested in where are they coming from? What are they trying to express here? I want to know more. I want to unpack that a little bit. So asking for them to clarify their concerns, clarify their interests. And there is a sort of a powerful, potentially powerful outcome of that kind of listening, which is that when you're asking them questions, when you're perhaps mirroring or paraphrasing, saying back to them essentially what you're hearing them say, they feel heard, right? And And when someone feels heard in a situation, so often in the mediations that we do, there is a conflict between two people that emanates from this feeling of not being heard. One of them feels that way, or both of them feel that way. And so a mediator, by them saying back to that person what they just said, and both parties being able to hear it, even if it's verbatim, what that person just said to you. So you're telling me that you're feeling really upset. So you're saying that you want to not be able to, let me do it again. So you're saying you don't want to wear a mask in the store. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Okay, right. You're allowing them to feel heard. And that can be transformational. That can really begin to shift things. So reflective listening, asking questions that are open-ended versus asking a question that gives a yes or a no reply, or only allows for a yes or no reply. So the more you can use open-ended questions. So tell me a little bit more about that. What is it that you're really interested in? What would change this situation for you? Versus, did you read the guidelines from the Department of Health, right? And then there's this element of validation and empathy. So acknowledging their feelings, validating, yeah, that's really frustrating. I went to the store last week and I had a similar experience. I can totally relate to I can understand why you're upset. Empathizing with their concerns, accepting the reactions that they may have potentially, that their perceptions and their feelings are legitimate. And so respecting them and doing your best not to come in with this judgmental, even if it's not intentional, but coming across as, or maybe even actually genuinely feeling some judgment toward a person. And again, this is where coming from a place of real curiosity and real interest, if that's your goal in that moment, you're not judging them, you're really wanting to know more and understand. And that can be really powerful, again. So there is also an opportunity, once you've allowed them to feel heard, that you might be able to explain a little bit more about where you are coming from, what your position is, or where your business or a place of employment or the business that you own is coming from. What guidelines have been imposed, for lack of a better term, that you are required to adhere to. And once when they've felt heard, there often is, not always, but ideally would be some reciprocity there, and they'll be more likely to hear what you have to say. So then would be a time to share a little bit more about, well, I don't really have a choice here. These are the guidelines that we have to follow. And this is why we're doing that. But again, it's to inform and not to be defensive, not to be angry. So checking in again with yourself. If you got to take some more breaths, if you got to drink some more water to make sure you're feeling grounded, if you're feeling angry and feeling frustrated, you might not be in a position to do some of these different types of steps or skills. So the last thing, and I think this could have gone first, but most importantly in all of this, is really to take care of yourself. To be checking in with yourself in whatever way you need to make sure that, hey, this is a stressful situation. Are you able to work through the situation? Maybe there's somebody else that you can tag in. Maybe you do need to take a break and come back later. Whatever you need to do to make sure you're taking care of your needs, very, very important. Okay. I'm going to pass it back over to Courtney now. Unless we got any questions there. I don't know if anyone typed any questions in.
Not at the moment, but
Okay.
certainly if you guys do have questions, you can start putting them in there. I just really want to touch upon one more thing before we open things up a little bit more. And that's just, when we think about dealing with customers in businesses, the phrase that is used most often is that the customer is always right. And we like to, in our work with customers, we like to try to, accommodate that as much as possible, because we want customers to be happy. We want them to come back. But, recognizing in this moment, when it comes to the issues that we have right now, around safety in light of COVID-19. There may be, and I would say are likely, situations where the customer is not right. And unfortunately you can't simply abide by that rule if someone's coming up to you and they're upset. And so I just, I wanted to mention, much in the vein of what Christopher just talked about, when you're in that type of situation, understanding where they're coming from by listening and validating and empathizing is really important, but also, using it as an opportunity to inform them of, the reasons why this can't be accommodated. I'm sorry that I can't accommodate this request, but the Board of Health requires us to do X, Y, and Z, and if we don't abide by that, we won't be able to continue operating the restaurant right now, or what have you. So giving them a situation where they can understand that it's not necessarily that you're just disagreeing and unwilling to accommodate them or even meet them halfway, but there's a good reason for it, and it helps them to better understand. I think one of the things people are facing right now is a lot of information overload. We've been constantly learning new information. We're moving through the stages of reopening, and so the rules keep changing, and all of that. And so people may not be as aware as you are, as business professionals, of what exactly the rules are for your type of establishment right now. And so just using the opportunity to share with them the reasons for why these rules have to be in place, or why certain measures have to be taken, is really helpful. And I think in most situations, your customers will understand that and will appreciate your explaining it to them. We actually had someone in our webinar last week from the farmers markets talk about how they had a customer very upset about not being able to bring the dog into the farmers market. And so that individual explained to them, well, I understand that, I like bringing my dog to the farmers market too. But the reason we can't do that right now is because the Board of Health has, decided that if we bring dogs into the farmers market, it's more likely that people will perhaps congregate, because everyone wants to pet the dog, right? And so, that therefore, really puts an issue around social distancing. And the customer said, oh my goodness, I totally get it. They just hadn't thought about that being a factor. And so once it was explained to them, they said, oh, okay, I get it. I will, next week I won't bring my dog with me. Totally fine. So, it's really just, they may not know. And so, use the opportunity to inform them. Also consider where there's options to be flexible. If it's, if there's rules, if there's opportunities where you can accommodate part of the request, or, things like that, great. But really, it's all just going to come down to a lot of information sharing and being understanding. They may not understand all the options they have for shopping. Perhaps if they don't want to wear a mask, you can remind them about curbside options, or, what have you, what other, what else is available to them. And so, that's more apt to end in, a positive resolution, and keeping that customer coming back to your establishment. All right, so I think we've talked at you long enough. So we would love to open it up for any questions that you have, or certainly any kinds of situations that you've either faced, or you're anticipating that you may face, and we can kind of talk through how you might approach those moments. And I know we primarily encouraged you to put those things in the chat, but I would say at this moment, if someone wants to chime in over audio, that's totally great, and Christopher in my mind.
And maybe to say again for folks on the call, have you had any interactions so far with a customer, and how did it go? What was the main issue, and how did you handle it? And maybe that's an opportunity to reflect on that with our presenters today.
Hey guys, this is Leah from Bow Market. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This has been great so far. I have been customer facing for the last 3 months at Bow Market running our safe supply market. And we have had all types of people come through in the last 15 weeks. We have had a few incidents of people who have not wanted to wear their masks, and it's been an easy case to get them to put it back on, given that Somerville has certain regulations in place. But there are definitely people who are not interested in hearing anything about rules and regulations. I mean, I've had, in our first week of the pandemic, before people were really getting used to this new normal, I had a gentleman come up, and before we could even explain what was going on, he was screaming in my face, telling me that I was taking away his right to shop freely. So I think that I would be interested in hearing your thoughts on when it kind of gets past the point of being able to have a real conversation, because it will get to that point, hopefully not often, but it will. And I'm wondering, aside from getting the police involved, what other options are there to help de-escalate situations when people really aren't interested in hearing you out or having a conversation about it?
Thanks, Leah.
It's an excellent question, Leah. Thanks. Courtney, are there some first thoughts that come to mind for you, or I'm happy to?
Sure. I mean, I think, Leah, what this brings to mind for me is, I think we've all seen some of the videos of interactions that have happened, like, with grocery stores, for instance, or Costco. I know there was another video that went around from someone at Costco where, a customer has videotaped their interaction with that, manager or employee around the mask wearing, where they're, I don't want to, or I can't wear my mask for X, Y, and Z reason. And, the response has been very, well, this is our policy. Maybe they offer, an alternative. I know one example where they said, well, we can shop for you, or things of that sort. And what I've seen, what my take on that has been, is what has been missing so often in those situations has been listening to the person who has the complaint a little bit more, and then, explaining to them a little bit more. So much of the interaction has been kind of, well, that's our policy, and I can offer you this option. Otherwise, you'll have to leave. So I think there's been, there's some missed opportunities there, again, just to kind of hear them out and also explain your position. But Christopher, if you want to talk a little bit more about, particularly when even that doesn't seem to make a difference.
Yeah. Well, one of this answer may not be the most satisfactory. I've done some peacekeeping at protests and rallies recently and over the years, and like this situation that you're talking about too, Leah, it's like there are infinite ways in which a situation may unfold, and context is important. And so just before talking a little bit more about if all of the steps that you're trying aren't working, what to do next, thinking about the context, checking in with yourself again, and deciding how to respond to this person. Can you step away? Can you take 5 minutes and talk with them? Do you want to ask them to follow you to a more quiet area that's still visible and people can see you, and ensuring your safety and so forth, but maybe not right in the thick of a lot of other commotion? So that de-escalation process, again, I think as much as you're able to allow that person to feel as though they are being heard. We talked a little bit about this last week, but sometimes that's mirroring what a person is saying with the same tone that they have. So someone's coming at you right off the bat yelling, maybe you're not going to yell back at them exactly exactly how they are with you, but you're saying, okay, I hear you. It sounds like you're really frustrated right now. I want to hear more about what you're saying. So sort of bringing your tone up just a little bit to really kind of meet them where they are can actually be quite effective. So anyway, those are just a few quick thoughts on that. I think, there is a degree of boundary setting, again, for your safety, and also just sort of what's realistic. You have responsibilities, that you also need to attend to, that yes, may include interacting and answering a customer's questions, but that there may be a point at which you have to say, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you anymore. And you have to walk away. So thinking again about, okay, what are the boundaries that I can't cross in this interaction? I can't spend an hour and a half with this person. So thinking about that might allow you to be able to ascertain whether or not you can meet this person's needs. And you just may well not be able to do that. So what to do in that case? I think, again, a lot of it's contextual. I don't think there is a right answer. Obviously, if things really escalate and you need to call in some extra support from other people or ask the person to leave, those are sort of, possible next steps that, again, I would just trust your instinct and intuition about that and make a decision that overall is going to keep you, that person, and others safe. I will also say that the work that we do in the community is mediation. And while this particular context may not be a good fit for mediation per se, there may be other contexts where a person really is wanting to engage and have a conflict be resolved. And that might be with you, that might be with somebody else. You can offer that. So I don't think I'm the right person to be able to answer your questions, but I know of some mediation centers in our area, and perhaps, you'd be interested in contacting them and working with them and the Board of Health for Somerville, I don't know, to, really unpack this concern that you have. So you might be able to kind of pass it along to the next person to have another professional be able to support the conversation. I'll pause it there. Hopefully that was helpful. Maybe there's some other questions, there's some follow-up, or maybe you have something else too, Courtney.
Yeah, just to kind of summarize a little bit, Christopher, I think what essentially what we just said, Leah, is you kind of exhaust your different approaches. You're listening, you're being very clear with them, perhaps helping take your tone down, and simply at one point you kind of just have to inform them of, I'm sorry, like I've listened to your concerns, you've confirmed I understand what you're saying. I've offered you some options, and then, but I'm at the point where I can't do anything further, and I can't accommodate your requests. I'm sorry about that. And then if they continue to be belligerent, you may just have to, use the approach, but essentially you've done everything you can do, when you ultimately reach the point where either they're still appearing threatening, perhaps you've had someone else join you, so you feel a little more safe, things like that. You may get to the point where you just have to, call in reinforcements, unfortunately, but at least, for yourself and also just for those who are around, they can kind of see that you've made that really thoughtful kind of attempt to reduce that level of conflict and frustration, and you've just exhausted your options. So I just wanted to name that. There are just certain situations, for whatever reason, where people are looking for a fight, and unfortunately you're the person that they picked to try to pick that fight with. So.
Yeah, I think 3 minutes into my conversation with that gentleman, I realized that there wasn't going to be a compromise possible. And at that point, it became more just about keeping the 50 people in my shopping arena safe. And that I did communicate that to him. I said, listen, now you're messing with the safety of what I'm supposed to be here doing, and that's not okay. And I did ask him, do you want to step aside and talk away? Because he was getting very aggressive in front of all of my shoppers who are starting to get nervous and a little afraid. And at that point, he was just off and leaving, but screaming on his way out. Yeah, so it was just, it wasn't going to be, we were never going to come to a compromise, and I had to realize that pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like you handled that really well, Leah. I just, just to say that, and that there are, I've worked retail, for years. And there's just those people who, you're not going to be able to resolve. Hopefully what we're sharing will be useful for a lot of other folks. But sometimes you can tell pretty quickly that this is not something that is going to be able to be solved today. And so what you did is exactly, to me, is what I would have done.
Yeah, I would say being customer facing for the last 3 months, my skin has grown 10 times thicker in this position than in any other position I've ever worked.
Mm-hmm. Are there other questions or situations that some of you are wanting to talk about?
I can say something.
Sure.
Yeah, like I work at the Somerville Community Corporation, so thanks for sharing these things. I wanted to join the call because it might be relevant for our staff at some point, because we do work with the public so much, but also because we support a lot of community members who are working in essential jobs and frontline customer facing positions. So I think that this is a skill set that can be really valuable for them. Not just in terms of mask wearing, but any customer facing job can be so stressful and those conflicts can arise. So I think one thing that I'm getting from this webinar that seems really important is how much we should have a plan in our own workplaces for any type of these scenarios that might arise, and kind of preparing with our coworkers and our team around us ahead of time. Because especially, if something does get to a point where we feel like there's safety issues, really needing to focus on shine the light on like when we would consider calling the police, and not given how much concern there is of what happens when we're calling the police these days, I think is something that I'd love to hear from other folks as well, because having more de-escalation skills in the workplace can hopefully avoid the need to call police in the future. So I think that's one thing I'll do, is take this back to my coworkers and make sure that we have a plan ahead of time.
Yeah, I think that's really wise. And if I could just offer some encouragement or an invitation, one of the most effective ways of training, and we spend so much time in the trainings that we offer, which we can't do here today, but certainly any of you could do at your respective workplaces with your colleagues and coworkers and staff, is role play. It can feel really uncomfortable to role play, especially if acting is not something that you lean toward, but create a scenario. Anyone would do, even if it was a past scenario, something you're familiar with or something that you're anticipating could happen, and someone plays both people or multiple people, and give each other a chance to debrief after that. So play that scenario out, offer feedback to folks who are doing it, let people talk about what they experienced during that, what worked, what didn't work. It's really okay to not get it right. That's going to be crucial in figuring out how to adapt, change, think about skills you may want to work on, and so forth. But role playing is really important. And the other thing I would just reiterate again is coming from that place of real inquiry. Like if you have children, if you've worked with children, and you think about how many questions they ask, that's how simple it is. It's sort of reverting back to that real basic, I want to know more. I don't understand. Help me understand. Can you share some more about what you're thinking, what you're feeling? What is it that has you, asking those questions? What's important to you? Again, just my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, I think it's great to have to have some plans in place or some approaches that you kind of establish as this is how we're going to, handle these kinds of situations. I think that can be really helpful to making it not feel so in the moment. You have to kind of figure out how you're going to deal with it. That's easy for us to say because, Christopher and I have both been doing this for years. And so this is kind of our instinct now. But I think, being thoughtful about this, and since we are running out of time, that leads me just to another point that I wanted to share, which is I will be putting together a resource based on the tips and techniques that Christopher and I shared with you today, that you can, that hopefully Nick can share out with you all, and also can be, posted. So you have some of those things to draw back on. And it'll just be, perhaps it's something that you can share with others. So they also, have an understanding of, okay, if this happens, here's a couple of things that I can do. And also recognizing what feels comfortable for you. Everything that we outlined may not feel perfectly comfortable to you right now. Maybe you'll get more comfortable with them as we go, but there might be a couple that, you feel like, okay, great, I could ask some questions. I can really do some great listening and a little bit of informing. Maybe I'm not comfortable with, mirroring in terms of tone, things of that sort. But, recognizing kind of where your comfort zone is and what you can do and when maybe you want to bring someone else in to help you out, can be really useful. So we will have something available for you all that you can use beyond just, what you've heard from us today. And thanks to Leah for mentioning humor. That's also a really great point. Sometimes you just need a little break in the tension. So if you can, if you're comfortable with using a little bit of humor, go for it. I think that's also a great idea. Awesome.
So it is 4:00, guys. I really appreciate having you both on today to talk with us. And I certainly I'm coming away with some new ways to approach these challenging situations. We are happy to post the resource that you mentioned, Courtney, on our Somerville business resource website. I just added the link in the chat, so that is where it will be. We'll also get this video up for those that weren't able to make it, or for those that are on the call, and you'd like to share this with your staff. I think, as part of coming up with a plan and revisiting some of the things we talked about can be so helpful. So I'll hand it to you guys for any final words, but thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks again, Nick, for reaching out to us. It's been really great to be able to offer, this little service to all of our folks out there who are, navigating either continuing to be open or reopening. Christopher and I both put our email addresses in the chat, so you can nab those. We're both certainly happy to be resources, whether it's for our services or just pointing you towards, other things that may be out there that could be helpful to you. So, feel free to use us in that way. And as a former Somerville resident, I'm sorry I'm not still there, but just want to say, the best of luck to you all as you navigate this new world that we're living in, and appreciate you all taking the time to be with us today.
Conflict as an opportunity. Reframing. Thanks, you all, and best wishes as you navigate the months and time ahead. Thanks for letting us share, and do be in touch if you have more questions or looking for extra support.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks, everybody.